Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Season 6, Episode 1 of Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze. I am your host, Professor Jeremy Vilmur, and joining us now is the man who picks up a bus, throws it back down as he wades through the buildings in the center of town, Bobzilla. What's happening, Bobby?
Oh, no. There you go. Godzilla. Fuck, are we in Tokyo, man? Where we at here? Blue Oyster Cult? Well, we're all over the place, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm here, man. Thank you for that introduction, I think.
I thought
How are
it
you,
was,
Professor?
I am okay. This time change is kind of messing with me a little bit, though, because, we pulled a bit of a stunt on everybody. We didn't record last weekend. We had one in the can, because I took a secret trip out east somewhere that we don't need to talk about. But I fucked up a couple hours doing that. Now there's been a time change, so I'm off like by 4 hours now, I think. I don't even know what time it is.
Yeah. And when you got on, you said, I think I'll try to figure out how this stuff works again.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a couple weeks since we spoke.
It has. How are things? Everything going okay?
Yeah, except for the obvious I'll bring up in just a second. Things like we've hit fall here like we're supposed to. Leaves have all changed and beautiful foliage in Kentucky. I like that. Just trying to live life, man. That's all we can do,
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Of course, I got to say this because it put me in a bummer yesterday. We lost Sean Connery this weekend, of all people.
Yeah, I saw that 007, man.
Yeah.
One thing about that, I didn't realize he was 90 though.
He was 2 days older than his own birthday. Yeah, he was an old man.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the obvious so we can get out of the way, because I told you earlier, once I get past this first part, we're going to be fine. Every time someone passes away in a wrestling business, my phone just blows up via text or calls or I get hit up on Twitter. And I had a couple of texts the other day, and, it was in relation to the passing of Tracy Smothers.
Yeah.
And, man, I have to tell you, it really hit me hard. You get callous to these sometimes when, like I said, my phone blows up. I'm very appreciative when people take the time to text and call me and tell me these things, so I do appreciate that. Jokingly, I want to say, hey, I'm just trying to outlive myself and a few other people and myself,
Yeah, exactly.
And I put that in my book. I kicked out on 2. And the reason I bring it up, because I went back and I looked at what I wrote about Tracy, because I knew I'd written about him in my second book. But Tracy, is just one of those great guys. Hey, what's your deal? What's your deal? That's what he'd always say. What's your deal? What's your deal, dude? What's your deal, man? And from the time I first got to Smoky Mountain, man, he was just one of the best guys, babyface, over big time, but also one of the boys and would, go to fight for the boys. He sparked me up to the gimmick table with him and the Rock and Roll Express, the Gimmick Wars. And I had like 10 pictures, 15 pictures or something I'd had from up in Canada or somewhere. He said, bring them out here, and stand by me, and then I immediately come home and next week or two and got photo shoots done and started getting gimmicks and stuff to catch on. But Tracy, man, there's probably just not enough good stuff I could say about him. I knew he had been sick. I had actually spoken to him 2 times, we announced it last November that he was sick. Yeah. I just going to miss him, because like I put in my book here, anytime that the wide-eyed Southern boy came to my area, I always made sure I got down there to see him. We had done several different shows together. Obviously worked in Smoky Mountain together. We worked in Cleveland All Pro Wrestling together, and just a bunch of indies, together. And I'm going to post a picture probably later today or tomorrow. I couldn't find the ones of just me and Tracy, but or Tracy myself. I do have a picture that's in the book. My son sent me the other day. I couldn't pull it up. Maybe to talk to you about that, Jeremy. It's on an older computer to get me pictures off of there. But it's me and Tracy and Ricky and Robert from 1995, and then it's 20 years later, 2015. It's a really cool picture of us. And like I said, the ones of Tracy and I've got them on a computer. I just need to pull them off of there, to be honest with you. So we'll talk about that off air. But we used to do these just independent shows and come around and personal appearances, this and that. And I'll say this, and then I'll just kind of, if you have any questions or anything that I could, answer about Tracy. Like I said, I mentioned my book. The last few years, did Bobby Fulton. He's another one. I always tell them I love them, or they tell me they love me, and give each other a hug, whatever. At Bobby Fulton's reunion a couple years ago, Tracy's like, I love you, Bobby, I love you, and just one of them guys I always did that with. I know I saw him, I think it was a year ago, April, I guess it was, up to the ASW show. I know I saw him up there a couple times over the last couple years too. Like I said, I talked to him on the phone, and I knew he wasn't doing well because the first time I did talk to him, he had already started some treatment. But everything I had read, on the internet, I thought, well, he's in remission, or he's going to, beat this thing. If anyone could beat it, Tracy Smothers can, because he's just that tough of a guy and that good of an attitude,
Yeah.
But time waits for no man, and no one here gets out alive, kind of thing. And that's why I'm just making no joke about it, just saying, hey, I'm just trying to outlive a few other people and myself, because we just never know from day to day. As you know, sometimes we talk off air, Jeremy. I do some meditation, and that's the thing that kind of helps me really, is just that try to live in that kind of moment, try to be in a moment, and try not to stay in the past too much, and try not to think too far ahead, overthinking things or worried about things I've been known to do with my nerves and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But just with this here, it just makes you appreciate the time you shared with that person, the love of the business, and the friendships you shared, and the camaraderie you shared, and the road trips you shared, and stuff like that. To know that I just get through the moment. Like I said, you almost become callous when you get that text or that call or whatever. Not that I'm callous. I'm just saying, like, now who's next, kind of thing. But the bottom line
is,
more.
I think it's more jaded than calloused, is what it is.
Yeah.
You get used to. You hit a point. Like I've done it in my life. I have lost so many people that I get a call that somebody's dead. I get sad, but it doesn't. I don't get shocked anymore.
Yeah, that's what very well said. That's me. Same thing when I got the call from about text. I just kind of. So this whole time when I got the text the other day about Tracy there, I just was like, I texted you, of course, and then I just went for a walk, man, and I was just like, just done some thinking, like, okay. Like I said, callous is probably not the right word, but well, you said I'm more jaded, just like, fuck, because I was hurt, don't get me wrong. But I've been kind of crazy all morning out here, just because I knew we'd be talking about this first. So we wanted to get that out of the way, because want to pay respects to Tracy, the wide-eyed Southern boy. Some of the funny things to it, that god-awful dance he would do, to the fans, like just the way he would do it was so funny, man. And some of the being in this area, he come to this area, my hometown area, within an hour or so, a lot, especially when back in the Smoky days and stuff. Man, it just always treated a fan so good, and just a baby face and a half, man. I do know there's a GoFundMe out there. Go find it if you want to. I don't have the address in front of me. I am going to donate. I hope later this evening or tomorrow, to be honest with you. I encourage you, if you don't remember, Jeremy, you and I years ago, we said, don't give till it hurts, give till it helps,
Yep.
So I might be able to give $5 or $50. I don't know, but I'm going to try to give something for his memorial funds, and I hope they do like a celebration of life and give him a good blessed going away, if you will, for the celebration of life, man, that Tracy lived. And he lived a good full life while he was here. Hell, he wrestled a bear without a muzzle on it, and just a good old Southern boy, and just a good dude, man. And I'm gonna miss him, and I know the fans will too. And anyway, that's all I really want to say about it. So thank you for letting me just voice that on the podcast. And I hope you fans understand how much respect and love I had for Tracy. Big part of my life. As I said, man, time waits for no man, and we just got to keep on moving on, so.
Well, I want, you and Tracy Smothers have careers that kind of mirror each other. You're both guys that when you went to these big corporate places, you were workers and you did your job. But when you went to work, for indies and in the South and stuff, you got to be on top for a while. So you guys have careers that kind of reflect each other. I do want to say that two things have shocked me since Tracy Smothers has passed away, though. New Jack has put out a thing where he sang Tracy Smothers' praises and said he considered him to be one of his only friends in the business.
Wow.
Other stuff as well. I mean, go find it. That's, you read this, you're like, well, somebody hacked his account. There's no fucking way New Jack said this. But also, Fritz von Moltke, that sour old bastard, had put a thing up the other day where he said there'd be no fucking bad talking Tracy Smothers on his page on Twitter. So, if those two guys are saying nice things, I'm shocked. I don't know how, I don't know how to put that in my head.
Yeah. Tracy's just a good guy, man. He's one of them guys that no one really, had anything bad to say about him, just a good dude.
Yeah.
And he had a hot temper. I'll say that. I was around him a lot. And hell, I wrestled him as kendo a couple of times. And the first couple of times, that mask, I couldn't even see out of it. It's all meshed and stuff. And, hell, I was throwing kicks and missing him. He goes, "What the hell you doing?" But he calmed me right down, but I couldn't see. I was panicking almost. And then, of course, he was carrying a match, telling me, because I'm just doing a quick deal with him, a little 2-minute deal each time for TV or for promo or whatever. But it's just funny shit like that, you remember, But he always say it, "What's your deal, man? What's your deal?" The first time I met Tracy, he do I know you? Do I know you? And that was the one way he would talk to get to know some of the people, the fans, and he made them feel comfortable, But the other thing, if something was going on, see, he already got me laughing now 'cause I'm thinking of crazy stuff. But Tracy would always say something like, "That's what I'm streaming. That's what I'm streaming," and it could be some kind of argument or something, and he just blended in and cracked people up with them. And I could see a smile now when he'd be saying, "That's what I'm streaming," like he's taking someone's side, but like saying, "That's what I'm talking about," or whatever. He would say, "That's what I'm streaming." Yeah. So see, you got to laugh out of me, man. That's good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tracy. There you go. How's
Absolutely.
that?
Everybody raise a glass to Tracy Smothers there.
There you go, man. Right.
Let's see here.
Yeah.
Oh, we gotta make a correction on something as well. When we talked about the Sheik, Bobby, we kind of put our feet in our mouths, I believe. It turns out that the Sheik was trained.
Yes. And as you mentioned earlier, this name, Bert Ruby, has come up about 10 times in the last couple of weeks. I was listening to a podcast, RVD on it, and I listened to the part where he was talking about his training, and he was putting over the Sheik as being his trainer, of course, him and Sabu, and he mentioned the name Bert Ruby. And then on this week's podcast, which we haven't even said what we're going to be talking about this week, it came up in a certain book, that we'll be talking about. It came up quite a bit. So Bert Ruby was a promoter up in Michigan and had a territory up there, had the Michigan territory back in the day apparently. But that's who trained the Sheik, come to find out.
Yeah, so I was happy to find that out. And this is one of those weird things. Like, I think I may have heard the name Bert Ruby before, just like heard it in passing. Yep. But then all of a sudden we find out that that's the guy that trained the Sheik, and then all of a sudden we hear like 15 stories in a row where Bert Ruby's part of them. And it's just one of those weird things that happen.
Yeah.
Let's see. I do want to cover Rodney over on Facebook. He follows us on our group there. He said that, so talking about the most brutal or gruesome matches, he said Duke Myers gigged himself so deep that the blood soaked back into his skin in Memphis. He says he was sitting at the table, I think probably ringside, I'm guessing. It was so damn gruesome, and it was in the early 80s. They stopped the match and sent him to the hospital in an ambulance. It was so heavy that it was still purple. For your blood to still be that dark, that means no oxygen is getting to it as quickly as it's pumping out. That's pretty nasty.
Oh man, well thank you there, Rodney. Appreciate that, man. I've got one from our gruesome one too. A couple of them we'll be talking about here. Shout out to No Gimmick Guy. He was talking about the Mankind bump off the top of the cage. He just put it over there. It was the most famous bump, and I'd say it has to be probably. And we were right in that. That's the one Terry Funk did come out and check on him. He was, because there was other bumps throughout Mankind's career, but that one there, like you said, you're friends, but you're not. You're enemies. Well, he comes out and checks on him, to make sure he's okay. But also, if I remember correctly, they used that on a front end of a promo for WWE for a long time, if I'm not mistaken. Like, don't try this at home or whatever.
Oh, I'm sure.
So a lot of people have seen that, I'm sure, through the years. But I remember when it happened, watching it, and it was just like, good God Almighty, that's just. I thought he was dead, I really did. So thank you, No Gimmick Guy, for bringing up, because kind of just we appreciate you people sending this kind of stuff into us. Kind of like we said, we're going back a couple episodes and verifying a couple things here, and it does us good because we do want to be correct in calling those things. Now, if that said, Jeremy, we've left a couple off here. A couple people wrote us, and so I will be respectful. A couple of them were intentionally left off, and the professor and myself talked about that prior to going on the air, so we didn't put them on there for the obvious. Should we mention it this week or not, Jeremy, or not? The couple of three obvious.
Well, I mean, you can mention them. I don't know how much time I want to spend talking about them, though.
How about zero time talking about
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so basically we left off Draws. We left off Owen, and then I had worked with and seen over in Japan Hayabushi and Habashi. I don't know, Kabashi. Anyway, he done the I think he done the shooting star press, I guess, and broke his neck and had a very, very gruesome injury there. So some of those just left off, so we wouldn't have to go into detail and talk about them, and also out of respect for but people did bring up a couple of them on our Twitter's account. I could be found at Bobby Blaze 744. Jeremy's at the GigaCast, and this podcast, when our dual one, is at Bell to Bell Blaze. And so some people wrote that in. We were doing it more to be sensitive towards our family and friends and loved ones, because those was very, very gruesome, but also more severe and serious, even death related.
Yeah.
So that's why it was left off. I'll go ahead and say this. I'm going to jump ahead real quick to kind of keep it where we're at there. I left one off of myself. I'm just going to go jump down to that real quick. Sure. I know we're at on our notes here, just kind of so we can get off the gruesome thing here for 1 second. I wrestled Nikita Koloff in my hometown, Jeremy, for a fundraiser for a boy that was a high school sophomore that had gotten sick. And this was way back in, I think in 91 or 92, but I wrestled Nikita Koloff. And we wrestled them instead at the Armory. My old junior high school is right beside the National Guard Army. The school donated their gym to us, so we wouldn't have to have any rent, because that'd be more money for the fundraiser.
Sure.
Dude, I'm wrestling Nikita. He's off TV, just doing indie stuff at this point. Like I said, it's probably 90 or 91. But so I go to shoot him to a turnbuckle, knowing that a big knee's going to come when I run over him full speed. Now, a couple of my friends reminded me of this week. After listening to the podcast, and they said, you left off the gruesome one. And so it was more of a gruesome thud than anything, and it hurts me to even think about it. So when you go to run at a guy, I'm going full speed, I'm young, I'm excited, I'm wrestling Nikita Koloff in my hometown, and he goes to throw the knee up, I should obviously run into his thigh or his hip area when he throws it up into my face and take it and protect myself. Well, by the time I guess I was on him so fast to the blazing speed that I had, he throws his knee up, but his knee pads also slipped down. I don't know if he wore it like that all the time, but it has slipped down below his knee like Flair wore his. And my jaw, when I turn my head, hits his knee, and it's lucky it didn't get broken. It was a guy, and that gym had this echo. It was just that it used to be a high school gym, then it was a junior high gym, so it was years and years old, but it's had this great echo system, just boom, the amplification of it, I guess, is, man, my jaw hit his knee and it just thud. So that was pretty gruesome for me. I won't say it's the worst injury I had, but a couple people said, man, you didn't mention that you wrestled Nikita. Put yourself over in your own show sometimes, Bobby. And I was like, okay, I'll bring it up. So not as gruesome as some of the ones that made the list, but getting kneed in the jaw by Nikita was no fun at all. I'll say that. Good thing was I didn't take the Russian sickle. And we did a 20-minute straight through Broadway, because just because it's a fundraiser, it's my hometown, and he was just doing Indian stuff at the time, and we was all happy that we put together a good show for this young man and his family. So it's all good, you know.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. I was going to ask about the Russian sickle, but since you were telling the story about the knee, I figured you didn't take it, because otherwise that would have been, that would have been right there, like, and then he tried to knock my head off. So,
yeah, we teased it actually. And, cause he said he wouldn't give it to me if I wasn't want to take the finish, and I'm like, yeah, I understand, that's your finish. I get it.
Yeah.
But, no, we teased it. He shot me in and went for it, but I grabbed the rope and stopped, and he stood there and he did his big bow up flex, and all that. And we teased it. So it was good. It wasn't my greatest match, but it was a damn good match for what it was. In fact, I met a guy, a good friend of mine. I didn't know this guy at the time. This big guy come down to the gym a couple years later, was walking down the hallway to the gym. I just thought of this. He goes, I hate you, man. I never even met this guy before. And I'm like, what? But I could tell he was joking.
Right.
And I said, what? He goes, man, you beat my favorite wrestler. And I said, what are you talking about, man? Because this is a couple years later. I was in Smoky Mountain at the time. He said, man, he goes, his name's Robert Pritchard, okay? Just give him a big plug here. He's a good dude. But he said, you beat my favorite wrestler, Nikita Koloff. And he was like in like the 8th grade or something when that happened, some 9th grade or something like that. He was like, you beat my favorite wrestler or something. I don't know how old he is, but I know he was in school and younger. And anyway, I do know, I think to this day, Nikita Koloff still his favorite wrestler, not me.
Yeah.
I actually rented a spot off him. And if any of the guys listening in the Ashland area, I had my training school out there at Pritchard Lawn Care. He had a big building, and I rented a spot, and several guys that I helped out. We ran shows there out here at his lawn care building several times actually. But anyway, that's just me telling a story there and getting Robert over there. Hell, he only listened to the show. He's too busy with his business. But just funny when someone comes up to you and says, I hate you. You don't even know him. You're like, what the fuck, man? Well, I could tell, though,
Yeah.
But I said I didn't beat him with a draw.
Oh, man.
So, anyway, let's move back to our list that you have to you had a couple more ahead of that. I jumped down there so we can get that out of the way.
Yep. Well, yeah, there are just a couple quick things. One of our regular listeners, Joe Lara, he has started a podcast. I believe they're just hosting it on YouTube. But if you're into like metal and hard rock and that kind of stuff, go to facebook.com/rockanon1. It's the number 1. So like Rockanon1. But Joe's like really into that heavy metal scene. Him and a bunch of friends are putting this on because you can't go to any shows right now. So this is how they're getting their metal fix.
Good luck, Joe. Thank you for listening, and we wish you luck with your podcast, man.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of podcasts, the Professor got over on one that'll be coming out this week. Wide Men Can't Jump podcast. They're celebrating this week their 3rd year anniversary show. I recorded it with them earlier this week, and the Professor got over, man. I'm just going to leave it at that. But I said we have to give shout outs to Nate and TR and this other guy that's up there that worked with them. Would
that be Tim Dombrova? Would that be Tim Dombrova?
Yes, mentioned him a couple of times because of the exchange rate up there. Our Canadian friend Tim.
who is the guy who sent us the song, the Bobby Blaze song a couple months back there, yeah.
So, Tim, thank you very much. Nate, it was a pleasure doing the podcast the other day. I hope you have good ratings this week. And TR, I'll catch up with you whenever, buddy. He stays very, very busy. But, yeah, they love our podcast, and we're friends and fans of their show as well. And I'm always glad to be on there. And I just want the Professor to know everyone put him over this week. But we had to put Tim over this week. And gladly and rightfully so. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will check it out. I'll see what they said. Because I know I was just called the Futon King for like a year there, so,
You know what? That didn't come up though. No, it's all good, man.
Yeah. You know, I'm afraid I might have like let everybody down when I let on that I really didn't have a futon. I think that might have just.
It killed the gimmick, man.
Yeah, I'm afraid.
No more gimmicks to sell.
Yeah, I'm afraid it did. All right, so.
All right.
We got all that out of the way. Bobby, what are we talking about this week?
Man, we are talking about the Playboy, Gary Hart, man.
Yeah.
We talked, his name came up a couple episodes back, and you were talking about him, and I knew you'd mentioned him several times, and it just like a bell ding went off during the podcast, said, hey, let's write that name down. We got something there, you know, and we had wanted to do something, we'll kind of do themes, and we're going to do a little top 10 reasons why we love to hate Gary Hart, if you will. Some of this will be based off of the professor done a lot of good research, and we both were lucky enough to have a copy of Gary Hart, My Life in Wrestling, with a little help from my friends. So we got some notes from that as well, some background stuff. So we hope to bring you a really, really good episode about the Playboy, Gary Hart.
Yep, absolutely. And as usual, this episode is brought to you by a VPN company called Private Internet Access. Go check them out at tinyurl.com/blaze, PIA. That's Papa India Alpha. So if you're looking for a VPN, go use them. All right. So, Bobby, with Gary Hart, I think he is one of those guys who doesn't get remembered or the credit that he deserves, except by a handful of us really fanatical fans. Because like down in Texas, man, this guy was a massive, not just creative force, but a massive villain as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think he probably was known worldwide. But he mostly stayed in little areas, well, huge areas, being Texas.
Yeah.
Just saying, he never went more to the Northeast territory, I guess, what we was getting at. But he did time in Australia and the Carolinas and Atlanta and Florida and then over to Texas, like you said. So he did get around. But, man, I don't think he got the just due that he deserved, man. So hopefully we can do that today and tell the fans a little bit more about Gary Hart. Gary Richard Williams was his real name, but Gary took he said to himself, Gary had 4 letters in it, and so did Hart. Well, he had an uncle named Buck that was a USMC during the Korean War, and he served with a guy named Hart Key. And so this guy named Hart Key apparently saved his Uncle Buck's life, and so it really meant something to him. So Gary come up with thinking that, Gary has 4 letters, Hart has 4 letters. That sounds good. He got him a heart tattoo on his arm at the age of 16, but he was already thinking ahead of the game, too, when he was breaking in, that would be a great name on the marquee, and he could put hearts all over his gimmick. Now, that's him as a wrestler, right, Jeremy? Because he eventually has his first match May 5th, 1960 in Wisconsin against Sailor White. He was known as Hurricane Hart with the blonde hair from Orlando, Florida. How do you say his trainer's name? Billy, is that Goals? When I was reading it, I wasn't sure. But anyway, Gary used, he went ahead and used that, the Hurricane Hart, and had blonde hair when he broke in as a wrestler.
Yes.
Billy, Goelz, goalies.
So I'm guessing that's either goals or gels, but I have never, honestly, I'm usually pretty good at people's last names because mine is so fucked up. I pay a lot of attention to them. I have never actually come across this last name before in my life before this week.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we'll say, goals. Anyway, so that's how he got to start, man. He had been doing some training with this guy up in that area, in the Chicago area. And that's where we're going to go with kind of just a little background there for you folks, that he wrestled, broke in 1960. So we're going back that far. And we're going to start our top 10. Is that right?
Yes,
and
we are.
We've got this is from his book. I'll let the professor introduce it because I think he has some heat with what Gary was saying.
Well, okay. So number 10 is Gary and the Mob with a question mark. Now, I'm in California. The Mob has never really been a presence here. There's a few rumors about the Gallows having I got an uncle and, you know, whatever. Okay. But I do happen to know that in the 60s in Chicago, you didn't fucking talk about the mob.
Right.
And Gary opens his book with, hey, you know, I don't want to break kayfabe. 5 years ago, I would never have done this. But here's all this shit I did with organized crime in Chicago in the 1960s. And I'm like,
yeah,
no. These guys still have sons and nephews and shit running around. You don't fucking do that, right? I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah, but I bought it, okay? I'm a
Okay.
mark. I bought it. I read it, and I was like, so, you know, he basically hooks up a guy that goes out and collects coins out of a machine. No harm there.
Mm-hmm.
The route keeps getting bigger to where people are bringing money in, and he's starting to catch on what's going on to where certain goods are coming through the back door or coming through the front door and going out the back door. And he starts making a little bit of money, you know, to keep hanging out with this guy. And eventually, I think he even said he went to one of the main Chicago syndicate crime bosses' homes. And the guy that he was with kind of downplayed that, you know, he was such a big mobster and stuff. But so his claim was, and of course he was making good money doing that, just kind of hanging out with the mob, if you will. And he was eating, you know, at some good restaurants, had a I guess had a nice two bedroom apartment, was doing quite well for himself even before he got into the world of professional wrestling. But he was doing all that while he was training. So I kind of bought into it. But again, the funny thing or the ironic thing is, or the irony lies in this, is he says what you said. He didn't want to break kayfabe. And 5 years prior to writing his book, he wouldn't have. But he goes in there and he talks pretty much way out there about the Chicago
real
so,
loose about the Chicago mob.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
now that being said, I'm not saying that. Look, there's probably a good chance that anything semi shady in the 60s in Chicago. I mean bars, restaurants. I'm assuming pro wrestling back in the day was pretty well tied into the mob structure as well, because there's a lot of opportunities to make money on the sly. Just like how comic books, when they started off, that was heavily tied into the illegal pornography industry. You know, there's ways you can use it as covers. While I'm not saying that he had nothing to do with the mob,
yeah,
but I'm saying he probably wasn't as in the know as maybe the book makes it sound.
I agree. And, you know, I think you said your brother brought this up too, and I'll say it as an author myself. Sometimes you have to take creative liberties, you know what I'm saying? So you got to work some things in there sometimes. But I agree with you. He probably knew a few people, but I don't think he was involved as much as he'd like to say. Otherwise, things could have been a lot worse for him, as he said, because that's what the transition was to the wrestling party. He was right there in that training part, started getting some matches, and they even had a private party for him. The mob guys did, and gave him like $900 and said good luck in his first territory up in Michigan once he was leaving the Chicago area. So you really don't walk away from that from what I hear. So I don't know how big a deal he was in it either. You know, just might have been a friend of a friend of a friend.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I read it. But
yeah.
I'm not saying he had nothing to do with it. I'm just saying the way I was reading it, I was like, okay,
yeah.
So just never break kayfabe, but fuck it, let's talk about the mob.
Yeah.
Just I don't know, man. I don't know.
I'm gonna tell you, I'm just kind of putting it out there too, because of what's number 9. I'm not disputing it and saying he didn't or he did, and Jeremy's just kind of questioned, but we're not really going to question too much about Gary Hart, because Gary will cut a bit.
Yeah, Gary Hart will cut a bit. So one of the things I loved was like every story in his book. Every story involves somebody setting up a razor at the beginning. Like every story is like, I was getting ready to go get sundaes for my kids, and I'm setting up a razor blade and blah, blah, blah.
He carried a razor.
Yeah, he did. He carried a straight razor in his jacket pocket. So apparently at some point the missing link comes up behind him and like wallops him in the head. And Gary, knowing that the missing link's a bigger guy, didn't say fuck all that first time. And then he got punched and knocked to the ground, so Gary goes for the razor and just slashes the shit out of the missing link.
Jeez.
Now the rumor is, or what Gary thought that Ken Mantell probably put the link up to it.
Yeah.
And that sounds like, see, this is what I mean. Like, the wrestling was some mobster shit back then. This is what I'm saying. It's like, I don't think he wasn't involved, but I don't think he was. But wrestling itself, before it was corporate, was some fucking shady business and shit like this. You could slice a dude up. Cops weren't called.
No.
HR, HR didn't get involved. You weren't taking a week off without pay while waiting
fuck the bookers want to put the guy up to hit you. Who you go to?
Yeah. So the long and the short of this one is that Gary carried a razor, and you did not fuck with Gary Hart.
No.
Nonetheless, he was a Chicago street boy according to his own background.
Right.
And he didn't give a fuck if you were bigger than him. He'd fucking look you right in the eye. Bobby also going along with the story you came across.
Yeah. Bill Watts, I was reading an article about him, and he talked about how I was just looking up some background stuff outside the book, and of course doing YouTube and just, internet and stuff. But Watts said that he backed Abby down in the right thing, that Abby was, being a little bit ashhole-ish, I guess, about business, not wanting to do certain things that was right for business. And Gary come in and fired up on Abby and backed him down, and apparently cussed him out as he was backing him down and yelling at him. And they said you don't go around cussing to Abby, and put him in his place, but Gary Hart did, and Abby ended up doing the right thing. Now, I don't know exactly what time period that was, but I know it was in an article I read, and it was Bill Watts was telling a story that he really respected Gary Hart from earlier on, and that was one of the things that impressed him later on in life, that he backed Abby down.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he pulled the blade out, but apparently he cussed him. And, of course, if he pulled the blade on Abby would probably just say, fucking cut my head. What are you going to do,
Yeah, you're just going to lose your fucking razor in this scar up here. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, that was just one of those things. I guess he just didn't take any shit from people, man. And like I said, that Chicago street background, I think, some of that was, pretty legit for him to get it. To do what he did with his life, no matter what, how a little bit maybe, on the book, how, he might have doctored it up a little bit or whatever. Fact is, he come up and does something really good with his life.
Oh, yeah.
In professional wrestling, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and, the thing is also, like, when we're talking about this, a lot of this information we're getting from his book or from stories that were told by him in a lot of cases. And look, we're both storytellers to a certain degree, and you never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a story and you go, well, I can make it good or I can make it factual, always go with good, because you can deal with the facts later, So I'm going to go.
Leaves number 8.
Yeah.
Right?
So WCCW, World Class Championship Wrestling, was a lot of Gary Hart back in the day. During its quote unquote golden years, he was the guy, he was the booker. He was handling the TV production. He was the driving force behind, like, even the creation of the 6-man tag titles, which they used as a way to promote one of the bigger feuds that we'll get into here in a bit. Gary was really the driving force creatively on and off screen.
Yep. He was there from like 1979 through 87, man.
Yeah, with a small break in there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a small break in there. Yep, sure was. But he's creative force behind that, man. That's why I was saying there's some facts there. We're not fabricating anything there. That's when you see the WCCW product. Gary Hart was a big part of the brains behind that operation on the booking end and the creative end. And like you say, we'll get a couple more things about that in just a second. But that's pretty cool, man. That I didn't know he was that much behind the scenes, which brought a point up to you and I. Mm-hmm. Just kind of real briefly. Gary, he broke in 1960. He eventually went to Australia with Jim Barnett. Jim Barnett. He come back from there and went to the Carolinas, and then I think he went to Oklahoma for Watts, and then down to Florida for Watts, which we'll get into some of that stuff he done too that way. Maybe why he did not work that Northeast corridor or work for the big corporation up east is because he was doing so good out in the big state of Texas. You know what I'm saying? We kind of talked about that. That's why I was going with that. He worked in a lot of major companies, but when he did Florida when it was hot, and then he got to Texas and it became hot. And like I said, that maybe even we was talking off air, maybe even he was offered a contract or something to come in up east and do something, but maybe it was not, they didn't want him to be Gary Hart. They maybe didn't want to be the Playboy. It might have been creative differences, whatever. I don't know that he ever got an offer to go up there or not. Just saying, he may have been like, you hear him talking about how good, why did Ole never, leave the Atlanta or leave the Georgia area? Because he was making so much money being right there at home. Mm-hmm. Maybe Hart he was probably making such good money in WCCW that he didn't have to leave home. That become his home,
Yeah.
Why the fuck do I need to go back to Atlanta again, or why do I need to go up, to New York and work or wherever when I can stay right here in my home area, which Texas is a huge area. Yep. And that they was killing it with for all those years, the glory years of WCCW. So that's my point. Sorry about the fucking random thought, man. I had a brain fart.
Oh, it happens. Yeah. Look, we talked for 2 hours straight. We're gonna have that brings up two thoughts here. You're talking about how the size of the Texas market. What we're not used to now, or what we don't see now, is that basically when you had a wrestling territory back in the day, there was wrestling 7 nights a week, sometimes twice on Sundays.
Yeah.
And it just went a circuit. It just, Monday was here, Tuesday was here. In Texas, you had 3 or 4 offices in Texas that shared talent.
Oh, so absolutely. Yeah.
So if you were wrestling in Texas at the time, there was work almost every day for you.
You had Dallas, and you had Houston, and you had Amarillo. You had that, at least that many. Going on, and a bunch of other stuff too, I'm sure.
Yeah. So if you during the time when everything was good, when everybody was getting along, which there comes a point here where Blanchard and Bosch and all these other guys start itching and going their own way, where it doesn't go so well. But when Texas was hitting on all cylinders, man, you could keep and WCCW did a real good job of keeping like 8 to 12 guys.
Yeah.
And working the shit out of them. So, those guys, they took their guys were all stars because of that. They had a small crew. They worked all the time. They could send them anywhere. And Texas is such a huge area that you could even stay fresh staying in your own area.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my point too, that maybe he had opportunities elsewhere, but otherwise he stayed where he was making the money, and that's a smart thing to do in that business.
Oh, absolutely. And this makes me think of one other thing, that in his book he was saying that while he was booking, after his kids were born, he started to look at booking differently. He'd bring a guy in, but he'd tell him, hey, I'm only going to use you for 6 months. Don't bring your family down here. Don't buy a house. Or he'd tell him, hey, I'm only going to use you for this period of time, but I'll keep you till the end of the semester so that your kids don't have to move middle of the year. Shit like that. And I thought that was really cool, because a lot of pro wrestling that you hear about, especially in this older time. Well, you remember that scene in Goodfellas where he's talking about, oh, your restaurant burned down, fuck you, pay me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. Fuck you, pay me. That's it.
That was kind of that.
Oh, man. All right. Well, let's move on here to number 7, which is his client list. I don't know that anyone had a client list like Gary Hart had, man. My goodness. First of all, let me jump back real quick. He started managing in the late 60s.
Yep.
He was tag team with Angelo Poffo. So during that time, he got to also manage Angelo, and he really enjoyed it. He felt like he was really comfortable on a microphone. He could say whatever he felt, and that's where he really started getting into the managing part. So he took Bobby Davis, I think it was Buddy Rogers' manager, that dressed real flashy and dressed real nice. Well, Gary didn't have that kind of clothes at the time, but he considered himself like a poor boy, a poor man's Bobby Davis, if you will. But that's where he started managing in the late 60s. And so from there, he had Angelo Poffo as one of his first clients, if you will, before he starts, making the rounds as a manager big time. The next big one was, and I'm going to let Jeremy take over after I mention this one name. The next big one that he managed was someone that Bill Watts put him with out in Oklahoma, and that was the original spoiler, Dan Jardine. So, as Watts said, when he put them two together, it really popped the territory. So I'm not saying that was his first big name he had, because I'm not sure if the chronological order is that. But, man, Jeremy, give us a rundown of some of these guys, great talents that he had in the stable.
Yeah, well, obviously that'd be the spoiler, Bruiser Brody. He came up with the idea for and executed the Great Kabuki, of which he actually ran 2 Great Kabuki simultaneously. He said if you saw Gary with the Great Kabuki, that was the real deal. If he didn't have Gary with him, that was Golden Dragon, or this other guy that he used. He also managed the Great Muta, who is, again, every masked wrestler I've ever seen, I'm pretty sure, was the Great Muta. Terry Funk. Gary did go to work for the Funks in Amarillo, and he wanted to go as a manager, but they didn't use managers, so he had to wrestle there. Abdullah the Butcher was one of the guys that he'd bring in. Rip Hawk, yep. Swede Hansen, Missouri Mauler, Brute Bernard. That was just basically going up to his time in WCCW, where we haven't even gotten into his time with Turner.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the JTEX Corp in Turner, that was like 1989. Once again, there's some familiar names. Muta, Funk, Buzzsaw, Dick Slater, and the Dragon Master. So, and I know we've probably left someone off that list.
Oh, we've left tons of people off. Pac Song, Dusty Rhodes.
You go.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into some of that in a few minutes, too.
Yep.
Get a little teasers out there, guys. Well, hell, do we have any more people to list? Because it looks like number 6, you're going somewhere with that. So use that as a segue. How's that?
We might as well go to number 6 then, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Number 6 is Gary and Dusty. And, of course, when I use the name Dusty, there's only one. I don't need to specify any further. We're talking about Dusty Rhodes here. Dusty Rhodes, up until the early 1970s, was a heel tag team wrestler, if you can put your head around that, Bobby.
Yep.
And in one match, Gary Hart and his client Pac Song turned on and beat the living tar out of Dusty Rhodes. This is where Dusty Rhodes turns face.
Yep, 1974 in Florida, I think.
Yep.
And I think I want to correct myself, if I'm not mistaken. When you watch that footage, I might have said Eddie Graham stepped back in to help, but it was actually Mike Graham tried to step back in and help Dusty out with that turn when Pat Song and Hart turned on him. So I think I said it was Eddie. It was actually Mike, because Dusty puts over Mike, saying he puts his name in there saying, this man's starting to show a little fire himself or something like that, But what a big swerve, man, to turn Dusty babyface to get him over like that. And my God, did Dusty get over as a face or what?
Oh yeah, second most recognizable athlete in the world, Bobby. Second most. Yeah.
Second most. Okay.
But this leads to a thing years later, when Gary is running WCCW for Fritz. Mm-hmm. They had dates with Harley Race set up to come in as world champion, and then something happened. Dusty got the title from Harley.
Yeah. And
Fritz, who I guess we have to think was trying to get his boys set up, and because he was president or about to become president of the NWA, and we have to assume that he was going to start pressuring to get David, I would guess.
Yeah, I would think so. And I think he was second in charge at that time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Or big influence in it. In NWA.
Yeah, but Fritz was a power player in the NWA.
Right.
But because of this, Fritz told Gary that Dusty would not be coming into Texas, basically, as world champion, because he didn't want a different Texas world champion than what he was doing. And Gary, because of his relationship with Dusty, actually wouldn't tell Dusty himself. He sent the message through Jim Barnett or somebody, what he said, how he did it. But okay. Yeah, I just thought that was like an interesting, just like, shit. How do you go and tell NWA world champion Dusty Rhodes, yeah, we can't use you?
Yeah.
How does that phone call work?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Dusty, I know you're the world champion, but yeah, fuck on off out of Dallas, man.
Oh, man. Okay, let's move on to number 5 since you already mentioned Fritz. Yep. Number 5 is Gary put the Von Erich boys over.
Yes, he did. So, a lot of people say that the Von Erichs were pushed inappropriately because it was Fritz's territory, but Gary's answer to that was, then how come Vern Gagne's kid wasn't as big a star as the Von Erichs were? How come Mike Graham wasn't as big a star as the Von Erichs were? He went out of his way to use them. And matter of fact, according to some of the stories I heard Gary tell, Fritz wasn't even that sure about putting his kids over that big, except Kerry.
Yeah.
Now, Kerry apparently was the golden boy and, whatever. But
right.
Outside of that, it sounded like Fritz was fighting Gary on putting his boys over. Does that match what you heard?
Yes, it does. But I think creative minds, told, got the best of it. Let's do this and ran with it.
Oh, yeah.
So obviously, Gary put the Von Erich boys over, and Fritz was probably none too happy at the beginning, but when he saw the money, I'm sure like, yeah, my boys are money, and was probably happy at the end. Well, glad that he went with what pushing him.
Yeah.
Gary Hart pushing him, not him pushing him right away. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because his kids were young. I mean, especially at the start of that. David was 23 when he died, 24? I mean, he was young.
Yeah.
But the other thing that happened at this point that helped push the Von Erichs over the line, well, there were two feuding guys back in the Georgia area who were kind of tired of working there, Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy, who used to be part of a team called the Fabulous Freebirds that had broken up.
Yeah.
Well, Gary apparently goes down there and talks Michael and Bam Bam into coming to Texas, but he also dug up Buddy Jack Roberts, and brought him in and reunited. Now, this is according to him. I didn't go back and double check it, but he reunited all 3 members of the Freebirds. And then, do we want to talk about the cage match?
Oh, we're going to be passing by a couple of things. If you want to move that on the list, since you're already talking about it, that's fine with me, brother.
Yeah.
Because everyone already knows about December of 1982, right?
I would think so, especially in our audience. Everybody in our audience knows.
We'll move it up from number 2 to put it in with this tied in right now, since we're already talking about it.
Yeah, we'll just kind of hit it, because Gary did stuff like he put 2 of the Freebirds with one of the Von Erichs in a tag match against some heels, and on the same card, he had Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy turn on Kerry Von Erich in the title match against Ric Flair. And it started one of the biggest feuds, I'd say the feud that everybody's been chasing for 30, 40 years since, trying to recapture the magic of the Freebirds versus the Von Erichs.
Yeah. And if you've ever listened, if you're a new listener, welcome to the podcast, fans. Thank you, wrestling fans, for tuning in. But as our regular listeners know, we've talked about that angle several times on several of our podcasts, and that's just so over for our audience, I think. That really caught on to the bell Bobby Blaze, and is that WCCW, and then that big cage match, and the smashing and the grashing and the biggest angle, like you said, for 33 years, going for 40 years now or whatever.
Yeah.
So hell yeah, man. All right, let's go to number 4. We mentioned this. I think this may have been why his name came up during a podcast a few weeks back. I could be mistaken, but I know we spoke about it, and I think that's when the little bell went off. And that is this, man. Gary survived the plane crash that killed Bobby Shane. Yep. And it's February 20th, 1975. Hart, I think he went back and pulled Austin Idol out of the water, and also helped Buddy Colt get out of the water, right?
Yes.
But Buddy Colt was flying it. I found to be interesting. That same plane had just been used by Watts. He flew it from Atlanta to Jacksonville, believe it or not. I don't know all the facts of it, but it was a little article, and said Watts had flown that same plane from Atlanta to Jacksonville. So I'm not sure if who took it from Jacksonville to where, but I know it was a stormy night in Tampa, and they was going for the runway. They pulled up short. Actually, they was going to a smaller airport. They couldn't make it to Tampa International. Anyway, the plane crashed into Tampa Bay, man. It killed Bobby Shane, but Hart survived it. Even with a bunch of, he was already injured. I think he broke his shoulder and leg, shoulder and back, wasn't it? He still swam back out and got help. He was the first one out, went back and helped the other two in.
Yeah.
And in his book, before he talks about the crash, because he talks about the pain of that. Now, if we was talking off air, if you remember earlier in the book, he talked about when he was breaking into wrestling, he was already about 6'3" and 235, but he said that he didn't lift weights a lot, but he did do a lot of swimming and running and Hindu squats and push-ups. But the first exercise that he said he loved and enjoyed was, and is in that first chapter, was swimming. Yeah. So here it is in 1975, as a grown man now, and he's out. He saved a couple guys, and I think we brought this up that he may have had. I don't know if he really talked in detail too much about. I know he talked about the injuries in the book, but I think personally he may have had a little bit of survivor's guilt that he didn't save Shane. But I don't know that. Just seemed like he may have felt a little bit. Well, you said it before. He felt responsible, I think, for one of the Von Erichs.
It was for Gino.
Yeah, for Gino. Okay, thank you. I know it's something like that. So I don't know that for sure, but I know in the book it talks. He was injured and he still went back out in the water and saved two other human beings, and survived the damn plane crash.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah.
I think that's why we brought his name up on the list anyway. Sorry.
No, I'm pretty sure it is when we talked about Florida or something.
Yeah. That's what it was, I bet.
Yeah. But yeah, so he was injured, swam out, got Austin Idol, swam out again, helped with Buddy Colt, and then couldn't find Bobby Shane.
Yeah.
And if you go and watch interviews with him about this or about Gino Hernandez's death, and he is just he's a fucking wreck over it.
Yeah.
Which is funny when you consider like on screen what a fucking heel he was.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you said it's like looking at the devil sometimes.
Yep.
And I apologize if I said he saved Austin Idol and Bobby Shane. I meant to say he saved Austin Idol and Buddy Colt because obviously Bobby Shane passed away. So might have twisted my words around there just a second. But anyway, that's that's one tough son of a gun to do that, man. And in the book, he does detail the injuries in a rehab. I think he even talks about the lawsuit from the plane company, the insurance money. How much each of them got and this and that. It's a little bit more detailed. Do you recall that, Jeremy, or not?
Only vaguely. I didn't really.
I know he covers it.
Yeah, he does cover it, but it didn't. Those aren't the kind of details that would stand out in my reading. You know what I mean? It's just.
And it's honestly just a real brief one. In the book. So, and we're going to give some information later on about this book, by the way. So bear with us. Let's go to number 3. I kind of skipped ahead on it here. I said he was a poor man's Bobby Davis, who was actually Buddy Rogers' manager. So Jeremy, the professor, comes up with one dapper son of a gun, the way he dressed. Talk to us, Professor.
So and you can actually Google this and start looking into it. There's a thing with managers. You can even see it with like Bobby Heenan. He'd wear like these shitty jumpsuits and whatnot. And it's because they know that they're going to get, a beer and soda and cigarette butts and shit thrown at them. But Gary Hart didn't care. He dressed when he could afford it. He started wearing nice clothes. When he couldn't afford it, he wore clothes that looked like they were nice clothes.
Yep.
And he didn't care that he was going to catch, his silk jacket was going to get ruined or whatever. He went with that look. Also, Bobby, I had a question here, and maybe or maybe we can look into it. I believe that Bobby Davis is also the reason that Bobby Heenan was called Bobby.
Oh, is that right?
I think it was him, yeah. It's something we'll check into, but Bobby Davis was apparently one of the quintessential original early, like, this is what a wrestling manager should be.
Okay, cool. So Bobby Heenan got the name Bobby from that.
I think
and
so.
If you're out there and you know it, send it in to us. Once again, on Twitter at the Bell to Bell Blaze, or at the Professor at the Geekish Cast, or myself at Bobby Blaze 744, and let us know, because like I said, we're not. We go back and try to correct anything we catch, or we learn something new. So if you know that about Heenan, a little trivia question there, maybe trivia question of the week. Where did Bobby Heenan get his name? Might have been from this Bobby Davis. Let us know.
Yep. As far as I remember off the top of my head, that's the case. Now maybe somebody who's out there towards, where did Bobby start? Did he start in Michigan? But somebody over Indiana, that's it.
Yep.
Yeah, somebody over in that market, maybe they know a little bit better. But yeah, so Gary Hart would dress nice. He tried to look nice. Now, one of the things I loved about one of the stories that he was doing is that Gary Hart used to have bleach blonde hair, and he, in a match with Gino Hernandez, I can't remember who it was against, but it was a loser gets their head shaved. Gary Hart had been worrying about losing his hair because he'd been noticing it disappear, and every time he was on camera, he said all he could watch was all the thin spots on the top of his head. So he used his balding as a story angle. So he comes out and he goes, I'm so confident that Gino's going to win that if he doesn't, you can shave my head. Well, Gino lost, and Gary Hart got his head shaved, and he stayed bald ever since that moment.
Okay.
I thought that was a great story. One of the other ones I wanted to cover, and I don't know where else we would fit this. I'll put it in here.
Yeah.
I don't remember what market it was, but somebody hired him and then told him that his character was gay Gary Hart.
Yeah, that's what you was telling me.
And so Gary Hart's like, and I'm sure growing up in Chicago, he probably knew a handful of guys that were gay who, just that was some shit you didn't talk about and moved on from. So he's like, I don't want to make fun of gay people. I don't want to, do that kind of character. So he talked, God, I don't remember who it was. It was Paul Bosch or whoever it was, but he talked him into letting him come out and give a rose to the ugliest woman in the crowd every night. And so when he'd come to the ring, he'd come out and give a rose to whatever, the heaviest woman he saw, or the least attractive woman. And he'd give a rose, saying that he was giving a flower to the most beautiful woman in all of Texas. So it actually pulled him back from the gay character into just a fucking heat magnet.
Yeah, and I can't see him doing that anyway. That just doesn't fit his character one bit. I just can't see it as far as that being. And, it's kind of, let's just jump ahead here. Let's put this at number 2, what we've been talking about. A booking genius.
Yes.
Obviously, he knew, hey, look, whoever this was he's talked to, and he's, where are you going to be gay, Gary Hart? And he's like, no, I'm not, but I've got a better idea. So that just goes with his creative mind, some of the stuff we've already talked about. But we'll go ahead and dig into this. We've talked about the Freebird feud. We've talked about Phantom title changes, making World Class bigger than what it even seemed. We talked about he could take credit for the big Dusty turning babyface in Florida. And also go right there, Jeremy, and tell me a little bit about what the next thing is.
Well, I put down here, he managed Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams.
Okay.
I
knew you want to talk about this.
Yeah, well, I would say, because Chris Adams started as a babyface, and then he turned on the Von Erichs. Now, one of the things that World Class, I would say, did better than anybody were betrayal storylines. Because they'd get a fucking crowd worked up over somebody turning on them. And number one, I'm actually going to specifically deal with one, but when he managed Gino and Chris Adams as a team together, they were just fucking despicable. I mean, you fucking hated them, You wanted to throw shit at the screen when they showed up because they'd drive a nice car, have hot chicks with them, spreading money around, wearing great clothes. This was all Gary Hart that did this, This was all Gary coming up with this shit, He was just like, so, somehow in wrestling, because people are involved, egos get involved, and you got guys like Abby and whoever they have a no job clause. I will not lose, just period. So Gary would have these situations where somebody wanted somebody else to go over, but he's like, we'll say, we'll use Kerry Von Erich or David Von Erich. We'll just throw a name in. Okay. So Paul Bosch is like, well, fuck him. I want him to lose to a jobber because I'm still mad at Fritz from that shit 10 years ago when he stole part of the territory from me. And Gary's like, okay, so I'm pushing these guys big all over the state, and I don't want that shit happening. So Gary had come up with this idea where, all right, so I'm going to let him go over, but he's going to fuck him, and that's how he gets the win. And then I'm going to go in, and I'm going to let him get me in a claw, and I'm going to razor blade myself so it looks like the fucking Von Erichs are just beating the shit out of me for having just fucked him on this match. He would do stuff like that. It would keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
The guys look strong. The winner still won according to how the promoter wanted it, but the guy who lost still got to look strong at the end of it. Gary got to take a licking because he just didn't give a shit. He was just there to tell a good story and put money in his pocket. So Gary, except for some of the stories he tells, but it seems like his ego did not get in the way of him putting on a good show and booking good programs.
Yeah, I agree with you. And leaving what it was, that last impression, even though the person, say, from the Houston office that went over on a Von Erich, say, whatever, there's heart in there and getting, like you said, the claw, gigging, whatever. And that's the last thing that people see. So therefore, the Von Erich stay strong too. So that's just good booking genius, like you put it there, man, just a booking genius. We mentioned before, just that creative focus he must have had, to come up from that early on in that book when he had said he was just always thinking about things and knew what to say on a microphone. He never felt intimidated when a microphone was handed to him or he took the microphone. Yeah. That was just something natural that happened early on in his career, and it just continued to but he was always thinking about the business, he said, just thinking ahead. This is what'll work. Like you said, he come up helping with the 6-man tags and mixing and matching guys together, getting the Freebirds together to come back with, like you said, the Von Erichs and things like that. So just creative genius is all it is, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, the creation of the 6-man title there. He needed a way to keep all 6 of those guys on a single story. And so he's like, all right, well, let's come up with a title for them specifically to feud over. I mean, we'll put that together. Because, and a lot of younger people now won't remember when a title storyline could run a year and a half, 2 years. One guy chasing the belt could go for 12, 16 months without a problem. Yeah.
We talked about that early on, about 12 to 18 months, about just chasing that title until you got that big payoff, man. And it's no different than I don't think the wrestling fans today get that much from a title change every other pay-per-view or what have you, but also when all of a sudden they just drop, and I'm not bringing up any specific thing that's happened recently or anything, I'm just saying, for example, there's a cage match. Well, we have 3 cage matches, and there's a lumberjack match. Well, lumberjacks are to keep people in the ring, all these different things. All of a sudden it's like, why did you even have the lumberjack match, or why did you have the cage match? There was build up to all these angles, so that's why you could take it for 12 months, 18 months, like you said, 2 years of a feud there, but each match there was a different stipulation or whatever to keep the interest there. There was a legitimate reason to have that lumberjack match or a legitimate reason to have that cage match, as we've talked about before. So I don't know if you're younger, I really appreciate you listening to the program, but if you like the old school wrestling, if you know what I'm talking about, go back and watch how they build it up over the course of that time. It just didn't change every week when you tuned in. Well, we're going to have a strap match this week, or the new champion is. That was a thing. The great thing about when we was talking about Florida championship wrestling, Florida, Georgia wrestling, we was talking about when they drop in on a Saturday night and they had footage. We actually had a title change in Tampa, Florida over the past weekend, and they'll give you a bit of the footage. That's the great thing about it. So that build up, man, and again, that takes creative booking, seeing into the future, being able to know, okay, this is what's going to draw, and this is how you draw it out, and the boys working together, saying, I'm not going to get you next week. On the air saying I'll get you next week, but that next week is next month, and that next month is 12 months, and then there's the big payoff, and then hell, there's my rant.
No, I think
I could listen to you all day, Professor. I really could.
Well, I think that's perfectly legitimate. Recently, and I think I sent you links to it, I went back and found some old episodes of Roy Shire's wrestling from San Francisco in the late 70s. Yes, you did.
Thank you.
And I noticed something that they would do. So, say, this guy comes in from Hawaii and he's looking for a title shot against Harley Race, okay? Well, Harley, he's out in Kansas or Florida, or he's not in San Francisco, okay? And he ain't going to be in San Francisco for another 10, 12 months. But this guy will come in and he'll have a video package from Harley that Harley sent him. They used to work these angles as creatively as they could. You know, they couldn't get the champ out there. Well, okay, but I can get a video from the champ and we'll act like it was something he sent to the wrestler to piss him off. They had ways to work these things and hold it and keep going, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, and I'm sure our fans do listen to big fans of the Ron Fuller podcast, the Studcast. You know, he talks about that too. Where I just listened here recently to two of his biggest episodes was him getting a world title against Terry Funk, and they called bicycling. They sent it on the Greyhound bus and stuff, but they would send that tape ahead, you know, that loop. But Funk was sending stuff from Amarillo. Dory and Terry both were both sending the video packages to Knoxville for Ron, you know, and then they put it into their shows. So that's so cool how they was thinking, man. You know, that's the whole thing. They was thinking, we got to make money, and here's how we make money. And so you put the video package together. So like you said, to change it back to your side of the story, Harley's going to be there eventually, like you said, to San Francisco. And you got that guy built up, and they're still doing a feud halfway across the damn country each and every week, you know. Yeah. So
that was a hell of a thing.
Good stuff, Professor. Good stuff.
Well, and there was a thing too that I noticed in Gary Hart's book, their world class show, $7,500. That was their production cost per week. And that covered their camera guys, their on-screen talent. Now I realize that that's $7,500 1980s dollars and not today, but still, what does it cost to put on an episode of Raw?
Jeez, I don't know.
Yeah, and remember, the guys in Texas got paid based on what came through the door that night.
Yep.
You know, and that's how they got paid. And you know, you were the one that smartened me up to like the 8-man show. How do you run a show with 8 guys? And that's when I realized, well, shit, that's what they were doing in Texas that whole time.
That's right. Rip Rogers smartened me up to it, him and Bobby Fulton, because Bobby run those shows would have 8 or 9 men on it, and Rip would say, man, you got that from Dallas, you know that. And I was like, no. And so Rip smartened me. He was like, yeah, he goes, go out there and had the captain's match, and so it'd be me and Bobby in the first match, you know. Then I'd screw him some way because I was a heel there, and that'd set up, you know, a tag match for later on. Then Bobby would do the Ninja Turtle or the whoever, you know, whatever gimmick he was doing that night, and I was doing Bad Street under a full, you know, body hood and stuff like that. It's just you do it, man, and you keep a small crew and just more money for you, you know, especially the promoter and for the office, you know. So anyway, so Jeremy, I'm just going to throw this out there because we know what number 1 is.
Yeah.
Before we get to number 1, because there's not going to be a whole lot we really need to say about number 1 that we haven't already spoken about. But I'm just going to throw this out there. We're talking a lot about this book, Gary Hart, My Life in Wrestling, with a little help from my friends. I'll just say Jeremy and I lucked into a copy of it, PDF file. I'll leave it at that. But I come across something, and Professor and I was speaking. I read the book a while back. I read several chapters this week and skimmed through it. But I found out there's an easier way to read this book if you cannot get a copy, because I think it's damn near impossible to get a copy if I'm not mistaken. But I found it. I was got in a rabbit hole on YouTube the other night. I was looking for Gary Hart stuff. It looped around. It took me through, I don't know. I mean, I might have been on Bobby Heenan stuff. Anyway, it all came back to, all of a sudden it popped up. Gary Hart's book. If you're interested in reading this book, it's available on YouTube as an audio book. Is that how the best way to tell you that, Professor?
That is
an audio book being read, right?
Yeah, that it's it's a static picture with like equalizer or something over the top of it, but it is a robo voiced, which actually isn't bad besides a few weird pronunciation kinks that happen. It is a artificially voiced reading of the book, and it's actually pretty damn good. Yeah.
So we're lucky enough to have a copy of it. But if you'd like to fact check us or read this book. And we know we've got a lot of educated wrestling fans in our audience out there, and that's just one way. I'm not even sure what the link is. I just know it's Gary Hart's book, and I typed it. I found it yesterday really quick, or Friday, I guess it was, and sent it to the professor by text. I said, here's the first chapter. And if I can do it, by God, anyone can do it. I'll tell you that. Real quickly, Jeremy, before we end with number one, speaking of books, my books help sponsor the show. Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boots Will Travel. That was my first book. Professor put a link out there, tinyurl.com, Blaze Book 1. The show gets a little bit of kickback from that, and we appreciate it. The book I was talking about, I mentioned Tracy Smothers in earlier at the top of the hour. I kicked out on The Educational Wrestler. That book is available at tinyurl.com/blazebook2. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say about the two books, because we got a couple more things we'll finish up with. But I'm going to let Jeremy take us to number one, then we'll finish it. How's that?
Yeah. And real quick here, I think if you go onto YouTube and you put in Pro Wrestle Machine Gary Hart, you'll find it. I'm pretty sure you'll find it that way.
Pro Wrestling Machine Gary Hart.
Just Pro Wrestle Machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so number one, and I got to preface this a little tiny bit here. So I did not grow up amongst the Southern Protestant kind of version of Christianity. My family was Catholic. Most people I knew were Catholic. So I didn't really get a sense of what Southern preachers were like until I saw Dusty Rhodes and Kevin Von Erich telling Chris Adams to turn his back on Gary Hart and all will be forgiven. There is a moment in the ring where Kevin Von Erich is just reaching out to Chris Adams, come back, come be friends with us again, come back to our side, come back to the light. And Gary Hart was the fucking devil in WCCW. When you really look at how all of this was structured, Gary Hart spent week after week trying to hire somebody to fucking kill those Von Erichs once and for all. God damn it, I'm going to get you guys. And
the reason I'm laughing is because I'm surprised we haven't done Gary Hart sooner, because at some time way back in probably season 1, the professor was talking. We've just developed this friendship through the years, and through this podcast, and we'll say something, to get the other one and like, oh, I didn't know that or this and that. And I didn't realize, because we're just getting ideas and throwing, putting the shows together. Jeremy was a big fan of at WCCW and knew so much more, but he just come out. I don't even know what podcast it was earlier in, season 1 or 2. And Jeremy just goes, that Gary Hart, he's a devil. And I start cracking up, man. And so ever since then, so when I saw number one, I just have to agree with you, man. He's a devil, man, because like you said, he was going to screw them boys every week, and just when you looked into his eyes, and he drew you in, man, and he was that evilness, and there's, like you said, all will be forgiven.
Yep. Well, Gary Hart, he'd come in and he'd get in your ear and he'd tell you lies and give you promises and, hey, just join with us. And, those fucking Von Erichs, man, they're keeping you down. Okay. You come with us, you'll be Texas heavyweight champion in 2 weeks. You'll have chicks and money and cars and all this cool shit. You see those glasses Gino Hernandez is wearing? You'll have glasses just like that. Oh, you see Farrah Fawcett hanging on his arm? I'll find you a chick hotter than Farrah Fawcett hanging off your arm. But you got to help us. I want you to break that fucking chair and jam it right in Kevin Von Erich's eye, right here in the middle of the goddamn ring, because I hate those fucking Von Erichs. That's kind of, my impression of Gary Hart.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Well, I hope everyone's enjoyed our top 10, man. We told you where you can find the book, and of course, you can go to YouTube and find just about anything nowadays. Our top 10, real brief, we're running back down. Number 10 was The Mob. Number 9, Gary Will Cut a Bitch. Number 8, WCCW was a lot of Gary. Number 7, his client list. Number 6 was Gary and Dusty. Number 7 was Gary put the Von Erich boys over by sticking a spike in her or a stake in her eye. I don't know what. He swam to try to save the lives of while he was injured himself. He did save some lives in Tampa Bay. And number 3, one dapper son of a gun. I'm laughing, man. Number 2, booking genius. Number 1, Gary Gary Hart was a devil. Professor, thank you for this great list, man, and thank you for this great podcast this week. Oh man, I appreciate it.
Oh, this was a fun one. I am glad we did this. One of the things I wanted to share real quick was I did find a video on YouTube, and it was everybody shoots on Gary Hart, right?
Okay.
And there was one, it was New Jack, and he was talking about, he goes, Gary was a smooth motherfucker. He goes, you take your blind black grandma, put her chair near the TV, and Gary Hart's on there talking, she'll be like, who is that smooth black man on TV?
That's pretty good, man.
That made me laugh.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, anything before we wrap up? Cause I'm just going to say, man, just people out there, keep on hanging on, man. Let's have hope in the future. I think by the time this comes out, you'll still be listening to it on Election Day. If that's the case, and your ass is up at 6 a.m. in your area and you have not voted yet, get out and vote on November 3rd, Election Day. Please vote. Thank you.
Yep, it is your civic duty to vote.
Yes.
Yeah, Bobby, I had to buy some new masks. My job put in a new rule. You cannot leave your desk without wearing a mask now. Okay. So I bought a whole pack of Lone Ranger masks. I'm just going to claim I was confused.
Oh, man. For Tex Johnson and Professor Jeremy Vilmur, I'm Bobby Blaze. Thank you for tuning in this week. Have a great week, wrestling fans.